Um, we got some drama going on over with the NCAA. So, if you guys remember when we first started this channel back up, we were talking about some of the allegations that Tennessee were facing in that, well, what's some casual to say, the previous offseason. And what came out of those allegations was that they were essentially going to be put on probation and they were going to be fined. Well, the NCAA, they're gonna be at it yet again. And the NCAA, here's the thing about the NCAA, right? They didn't even tell Tennessee that they were investigating the matter. They had to do it through a spokesperson and through these media outlets. The NCAA hasn't even sent out a notice of allegations to Tennessee, but the NCAA is looking into them. They are looking into them once again. And here's the gravity of the situation in all of this, right? Because of the fact that they are under probation, if the NCAA does end up finding that Tennessee did have some wrongdoings yet again, then the program could face more severe punishments. We're talking about the possibility of bowl bans, forfeiture of wins, even more scholarships being reduced. So it's very imperative that University of Tennessee comes out of this unscathed because there could be severe consequences if they don't. Now, as for what Tennessee is dealing with, it is based off of the NIL collective rules that are in place. That being said, though, what we've seen in the past is that whenever the NCAA comes at your door, usually you see programs cooperate with the investigation. You kind of what a dog does to many kind human beings. They roll on their backs and expose the belly. Let it be known that you're not a threat. Well, University of Tennessee, they are not doing that at all. They are going scorched earth. They are going hard back at the NCAA. And this is not just their university president saying that what the NCAA doing is wrong. This is not just the athletic director at the University of Tennessee saying, "Oh, what the NCAA is doing is wrong." Legal minds are starting to get involved in this as well. You got both the assistant district attorney for Tennessee, or the attorney general at Tennessee, and the attorney general of the state of Virginia. Both those two states have collaborated in a lawsuit against the NCAA in regards to the student athlete pay. Now, in the NCAA, in their case, the NCAA, at least as of recent, has not had a very good track record of winning in the courtrooms, at least as of recent. Remember back a few years ago when they lost over the idea of amateurism, and this really opened up this floodgate of NIL becoming a thing in the first place. They lost that just a few years ago. That's how we got NIL that we have today. Just a couple of months ago, we've also had the situation in where the schools and I think a couple of states also got involved in suing the NCAA over the two-time transfer rule. And the NCAA lost that. So now you see, the two-time transfers that are playing able to step on courts and step on football fields around the country. In some cases, a handful of players were able to play in bowl games because of the reversal in the courtrooms that are happening around America right now. So you have all of this happening, and it just goes to show, really, I think what many of you are thinking, there needs to be effective rules and regulations and just consistency with how NIL is regulated, how the transfer portal is regulated as well, because those two things could make some of the more high profile coaches in our industry right now, they could leave a little bit earlier than anticipated because of how we're kind of in this Wild West kind of mentality right now. But the NCAA and what we have seen them do, they are just simply not effective at getting that job done at all. The very thing that is supposed to empower student athletes, is supposed to look out for the best interests of student athletes, it's not there. It is not effective really at all. And it's part of the reason why you start to see, for example, the Big Ten, the SEC. I think it was announced literally on on the ESPN app today. You see the SEC and the Big Ten form an alliance, so to speak, not the same scheduling alliance that you see the Big Ten and the Pac-12 have a couple of years ago. Big Ten ends up stabbing the Pac-12 in the back, but that's a different conversation. This is to look at some of those critical issues. We're starting to move over to a direction of where we have maybe a college football commissioner in place at some point, because the NCAA is not capable of enforcing their own rules that they place. And this is really the hardy issue of why the university president at Tennessee has such an issue with the NCAA, why multiple attorney generals are going after the NCAA, why you have the athletic director going after the University of Tennessee right about now. It's because of those things. It's because of the lack of consistency. And if you're really any school, and Tennessee made the same argument as well, if you're going to punish us for these NIL rule breaking allegations, you got to look at most of these other schools in the country right now, because most of these other schools are dealing with the same thing, at least in major college football, right? You have this constant moving of the goalposts because we've had very little time actually going out designing, okay, how is NIL actually going to work while we're protecting the student athletes? How can these student athletes get paid while at the same time it's being regulated properly so that it doesn't create too much of a competitive advantage or disadvantage? Well, the NCAA never did that because they never gave up an inch. And forward thinkers back in the early 2010s, late 2000s, I heard this on the Late Kick show with Josh Pate earlier today, actually, is if you don't give up an inch now, you're going to pay for it a lot later. And the NCAA, they were very firm on how they viewed amateur athletes in the NCAA structure. They should not be paid outside of their scholarships that they receive from these institutions, as well as any financial aid that they may receive as well. Well, we now see the ramifications of that. They didn't give up an inch, or didn't even give up a little bit. And because they didn't even think about a time where NIL actually becomes a thing, they have no idea, absolutely no idea how to deal with it. And we're seeing the ramifications of that now. So I'm sure this is going to play out in the courts. The NCAA, I know it, you know it as well. Who knows what they're going to do? It's literally like spinning a wheel of discipline. Um, your guess is as good as mine, but I'm deeply worried about what's going to come out of this, and it makes you think that we are seeing really the straw that breaks the camel's back at this point. You know, there's always been little inklings of the NCAA starting to disintegrate, but we're starting to get to a point where, hey, maybe the NCAA is truly coming to an end here relatively soon, at least in its role in college football. Maybe in other sports, it might be served a little bit better for other sports, but for college football, it might be coming to an end